You don't intimidate me, grandfather. The gang leader's declaration cut through the cafe as conversation evaporated. The elderly gentleman didn't rise to challenge, didn't shift position. He merely drummed his fingers. 3 taps, a heartbeat of stillness, then 2 more. A moment's quiet. Then he lifted his coffee cup for a measured sip. 120 minutes later, a quartet of unmarked SUVs crossed state boundaries. No official insignia, no flashing lights, yet every occupant bore identical markings. Foxtrot 6. When they reached the town center, they posed a single question. Where can we find him? If you believe command presence endures beyond uniform, write respect in the comments below. Mapleton Springs remained virtually unchanged over 4 decades. The central boulevard still featured the same 5 traffic signals. The municipal building's timepiece still ran 180 seconds ahead. And Tom Mapleton, 74, still claimed the identical corner table at Annie's Eatery every morning between 6:30 and 8:15. Townspeople recognized him as the quiet fellow who perused newspapers alongside black coffee. Some speculated he'd been an educator. Others guessed perhaps a financial professional. Nobody knew with certainty, and Tom never offered corrections. His time-worn hands turned the Chronicle's pages with disciplined precision. Reading spectacles rested low on his nose. This specific Tuesday appeared unremarkable. Morning sunlight filtered through dust-coated blinds. The radio softly played country melodies nobody truly attended to. Jessica, the youthful server financing her community college education, replenished Tom's cup a 3rd time. "Need anything else, Mr. Mapleton?" He declined with a courteous smile. "Thank you kindly." The entrance chime sounded as 5 individuals entered, bringing with them the acrid aroma of cigarettes and something more menacing. Leather jackets, skin adorned with ink climbing toward jawlines, gazes that assessed the establishment with Hunter's calculation. Annie's wasn't their typical destination. They belonged to a motorcycle collective recently established on the town's periphery, introducing a steady stream of narcotics and difficulties. The local sheriff described them as a dilemma without remedy. The tallest member, reptile tattoo winding around his throat, slid into a booth, obstructing passage to the kitchen. His companions positioned themselves strategically. Patrons stiffened. Discussions ceased. "Hey, beautiful," Reptile Tattoo called to Jessica. "Come over here a moment." She approached warily, order pad clutched defensively. "What can I bring you, sir?" His arm shot forward, seizing her wrist. "Let's start with your phone number." "Please allow me through." Her voice quavered. "Why so tense?" "We're simply being sociable." His grip intensified as she attempted to withdraw. 4 additional customers occupied the diner. An elderly couple hastily settled their check and departed. A corporate professional stared intently at his device. Nobody intervened. Tom Mapleton methodically folded his newspaper. He set it aside and positioned both hands flat against the tabletop. His expression remained unchanged, but something in his bearing transformed, an almost imperceptible alignment of posture. Without raising his gaze, his right hand formed a loose fist, then deliberately executed tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. The sound registered softly, unimposing, meaningless to virtually everyone present. But in the kitchen doorway, veteran Arthur Moretti, who'd prepared meals at Annie's for 3 decades, became motionless. The cooking utensil in his grasp trembled faintly as his eyes connected with Tom's. A single nod passed between them. Arthur removed his cooking garment, suspended it on a hook, and silently exited through the rear entrance. Nobody noticed his departure. Nobody noticed Tom's tapping pattern. Nobody comprehended that a countdown had commenced. "I asked your name, gorgeous." Reptile Tattoo pulled Jessica closer, toppling a sugar container. "Jessica," she whispered. "My name is Jessica." "See? Making friends already." His companion's laughter, harsh and grating, filled the modest eatery. Tom placed his coffee cup down with a gentle sound. He rose not hastily, but with the calculated movements of someone who'd learned that urgency often produced errors. At full stature, he wasn't particularly impressive. Medium frame, silver hair trimmed short, nothing suggesting he was anything beyond an elderly gentleman about to make an unwise choice. "You've enjoyed yourselves," Tom stated evenly. "That's sufficient." The gang members turned toward him, momentarily startled that anyone would interject. Then amusement spread across their features. "You planning to intervene, Grandpa?" Reptile Tattoo released Jessica's wrist to concentrate on this new diversion. "I'm requesting civilly," Tom responded, his tone measured. "Allow the young woman to perform her duties." One member, younger, with bare scalp and nervous movements, advanced. "Perhaps you missed something, old-timer. There are 5 of us." "I enumerated correctly," Tom acknowledged. Bare Scalp grinned and thrust Tom forcefully in the chest. Tom retreated one step but maintained his stance. Another gang member swept Tom's table, sending coffee, newspaper, and utensils crashing floorward. Tom descended with them, a deliberate, controlled downward motion that appeared like an elderly man falling, but was entirely different. He landed on one knee, one palm braced against the floor. 2 hours, he murmured, looking upward at them. Reptile Tattoo leaned downward. "What's that supposed to signify, senior citizen?" Tom offered no response. Didn't need to. His message wasn't intended for them. Meanwhile, Arthur Moretti was piloting his 1998 Toyota Camry along rural Route 27, exceeding the speed limit by 15 miles. His gnarled fingers gripped an outdated mobile phone, not his everyday device, but one preserved in his glove compartment for years, charged monthly but never utilized until today. At the intersection, he paused and dialed a number unchanged since 1983. When the automated signal sounded, he entered a 12-digit sequence followed by pattern 32. The messaging system connected to a private server maintained by former members of the Special Activities Division. Men who had operated together in classified missions during Vietnam and Laos in locations still officially non-existent on any chart. Across the nation, specific communication devices activated, specific computers alerted. A code inactive for 42 years suddenly materialized on secure displays. Foxtrot 6 Echo Table. 2 hours threat active. In 3 different states, men in their 7th and 8th decades moved with unexpected agility. Weapons emerged from concealed safes. Vehicles received fuel. No inquiries made, no verification required. The system operated on absolute trust. If the signal activated, it was legitimate. If one of their own required assistance, nothing else held significance. Back at the eatery, circumstances had worsened. The gang had commandeered the establishment, helping themselves to provisions, harassing Jessica whenever she passed. They'd compelled the cook to prepare their breakfast, unaware the man preparing their eggs wasn't the regular chef at all, but a dishwasher pressed into service. Tom sat quietly at a different booth, where they permitted him to remain after their initial entertainment subsided. He remained silent, avoided eye contact, occasionally checked his timepiece. "What's so fascinating about the time, Grandpa?" Reptile Tattoo shouted. "Appointments to keep?" "No," Tom answered truthfully. "But they do." The gang leader frowned. "Who's they?" Tom didn't respond. Just sampled the fresh coffee Jessica had brought him. 1 hour and 45 minutes had elapsed since the signal. Arthur Moretti sat at a truck stop 20 miles distant, watching the town entrance. He'd placed the call, fulfilled his responsibility. Now he waited, wondering if he'd imagined that old protocol, if those men even survived, if anyone would actually arrive. Then he witnessed them. 4 black SUVs, civilian models but undeniably military in their precision, driving in perfect formation. No markings, windows darkly tinted, traveling precisely at the posted limit. Arthur exhaled gradually, tears forming. "My God," he whispered. They actually responded. If you believe certain networks never deactivate, comment respect below. Precisely 1 hour and 58 minutes following Tom's signal, the convoy entered Mapleton Springs boundaries. They proceeded past the welcome marker, past the Protestant church, past the secondary school where Friday's football match was advertised on the announcement board. Local inhabitants paused to observe the unusual spectacle. Four identical vehicles moving with military discipline through their tranquil streets. Inside Annie's eatery, nobody noticed the approaching transport. The gang had settled into indolent arrogance, having claimed the restaurant as temporary territory. They'd forced the frightened replacement cook to prepare additional food. Jessica moved between tables with reddened eyes, careful to avoid their reaching hands. Tom Mapleton sat upright in his booth, hands folded atop the table. His coffee had cooled, his gaze fixed on the timepiece above the counter. 8:28 a.m. Then engine rumbling, brake squeals applied simultaneously, four doors opening and closing in perfect sequence. The entrance chime sounded. A man entered, mid-60s with iron-gray hair and the rigid posture of someone who never abandoned military bearing. His gaze swept the room, categorizing threats and exits instantaneously. Three additional men followed, dispersing with practiced efficiency. All wore civilian attire, jeans, plaid shirts, work boots, but moved like soldiers. And on each man's forearm, partially visible beneath rolled sleeves, identical markings. Foxtrot 6 with a blade piercing the O. The lead individual walked directly to Tom's table. "Sir, we received the alert." Tom nodded once. "Don't injure them, simply eliminate the problem." Reptile Tattoo stood, confusion yielding to hostility. "Who the hell are these guys?" The newcomers ignored him. Instead, they positioned themselves strategically throughout the diner. One by the entrance, one near the kitchen, two facing the gang members. "I don't know what charade you're orchestrating, old man," Reptile Tattoo said, reaching behind his back. "But you selected—" He never completed the sentence. The gray-haired leader moved with astonishing speed for his age, twisting the gang leader's arm upward and outward. Something metallic, a firearm, clattered floorward. The remaining gang members found themselves similarly neutralized, not with strikes or kicks, but with precise joint manipulations, indicating decades of close-quarters combat experience. Within half a minute, all five were disarmed and secured. "Who the hell are you people?" Reptile Tattoo gasped, face pressed against the countertop. Tom stood, brushing imaginary dust from his coat sleeve. He straightened his collar deliberately. "Someone who discontinued warning people long ago." The Foxtrot team leader, a man whose military identification once listed him as Colonel James Harrison before his service record vanished from official databases, nodded to Tom. "Extraction protocol, sir. County boundary, no permanent damage." "Understood." One by one, the gang members were escorted to waiting vehicles. No restraints were visible, yet none attempted escape. Something in the cold professionalism of these senior men communicated unmistakably. Resistance would prove unwise. Sheriff Mark Wilson arrived 15 minutes afterward. Lights flashing to discover a perfectly ordinary diner scene. Coffee being served, breakfast consumed. Tom Mapleton reading his newspaper. "Received a call about a disturbance?" the sheriff inquired, appearing confused. Jessica, the waitress, smiled. "No disturbance, Sheriff. Just some customers who departed abruptly. Thought I observed some motorcycles outside earlier." "They abandoned them," Tom commented without looking up from his paper. "Someone will retrieve them later today." The sheriff frowned. "That's unusual." Tom turned a page. "So is tormenting waitresses before 9 in the morning." Something in Tom's inflection convinced the sheriff not to investigate further. He adjusted his hat and departed, unable to dismiss the sensation he'd overlooked something significant. By nightfall, the SUVs had recrossed the state boundary. The gang members were deposited at a transit station 2 counties distant with explicit understanding. Return to Mapleton Springs and the next extraction would be permanent. Their motorcycles appeared in police impoundment the following morning with proper documentation and citing parking infractions. Nobody questioned how they arrived there. The Foxtrot 6 team dispersed to their civilian existences. A hardware merchant in Pennsylvania, a fishing expert in Michigan, a community educator in Ohio, and a retired conservation officer in Kentucky. Their communication devices returned to standby mode, awaiting a call they hoped would never recur. The following week, Annie's Eatery reopened after what the proprietor termed minor renovations. The most noticeable alteration was a small brass plaque installed above booth 3. If he taps the table, depart. No explanation offered, none requested. Jessica returned to work with newfound confidence in her manner. Each morning at precisely 6:30, she placed black coffee on Tom's table before he even settled. "Complimentary, Mr. Mapleton, always." He said nothing, merely acknowledged with a nod and unfolded his newspaper. Arthur Moretti completed his final shift that Friday after 30 years preparing identical Denver omelets and flipping identical pancakes. He retired permanently. He'd purchased a small retreat near Yellowstone, something discussed for years but never pursued. Before departing town, he slipped an envelope beneath Tom's door. Inside, a single note card with meticulous handwriting. "I witnessed phantoms rise that night, and they continue to salute." No signature, none required. At the Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall in the neighboring county, conversations shifted whenever Tom's name surfaced. Younger veterans noticed how older men, particularly those from special operations units, would lower voices to near whispers. Fragments like Foxtrot 6 and Echo Protocol occasionally drifted across rooms. When directly questioned, these men would simply shake heads. "Just ancient war stories," they'd respond. "Nothing worth recounting." But their respectful acknowledgments when Tom occasionally visited communicated volumes. The motorcycle gang never reappeared in Mapleton Springs. Rumors circulated they had completely relocated to another state. The local narcotic problems that had been increasing suddenly diminished. The sheriff attributed this to enhanced enforcement policies, and nobody contradicted him. Tom's existence returned to comfortable routine. Morning coffee, newspaper, occasional fishing expeditions. He declined 3 interview requests from military historians and one from a true crime podcast that somehow discovered the diner incident. His neighbors observed only one change. Periodically, other senior men would visit. They never remained long, never created disturbances, but their vehicles always displayed out-of-state registration, and they invariably treated Tom with deference approaching veneration. And occasionally, when the diner grew particularly crowded, or when strangers with hardened expressions and malevolent intentions wandered in, Tom would casually tap the table in that identical pattern: tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. Not because assistance was required, but as self-reminder and caution to others that certain networks never deactivate, certain brotherhoods never expire, certain men never required uniforms to command respect. In an era of shouted threats and digital aggression, Tom Mapleton had mastered the most potent force: silent authority. If you believe some leaders never needed insignia to issue commands, subscribe to Ironheart Chronicles for more stories of enduring strength.